Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Yarn Ambassador podblog. For those of you who are first-time viewers, thank you very much for turning up, and for those of you who have come back, thank you very much as well. This is a podblog, so a podcast and a blog in written form, so you can access the same content in different formats. And it aims to showcase the work of independent yarn dyers, independent yarn producers from the UK. Just to add, none of this is sponsored by any of the dyers who I choose. I pick them because I like their stuff and I do it for fun, and I will keep on doing it as long as my budget holds out. All of the yarn that I showcase I have bought, again, because I like it and I think it's worthwhile buying. Somebody did ask me on the Ravelry group thread how I'm going to keep this up, and it's a very good question. I'm doing it because I like it, and as long as I am enjoying it, I will keep going. So that's how long it'll go. I do know that over the next couple of months I have a very busy other non-knitting life going on, which will impede somewhat my ability to knit up and check out different designers. But I do hope to keep the podcast going, even in a kind of skeleton form, so you can follow who I am focusing on each month. The reason I started this was because I didn't know enough about the independent yarn dyers who are based in the UK. I watch a lot of podcasts from the States and from the UK, and I would pick up different names here and there, but I never really got to kind of see who else was out there. And it is such a wonderful community, and the more you get into it on Instagram, on Ravelry, through podcasts and through knitting festivals, you can discover so much. But for those of you who might not be able to get to knitting festivals, or who don't have a big presence on other social media, this is perhaps to give a little bit of a dip of your toe into the independent yarn dyer scene. And it's not just about independent yarn dyers, it's really about those people who are producing, selling, promoting anything to do with the knitting community within the UK as well. I was lucky enough to get to Yarndale last weekend, and it was really lovely to meet so many people from that knitting community in the UK. I got to see other podcasters, so I met up with the lovely Zoe from the Pins and Needles UK podcast, and the lovely Jenny from Owl About Yarn, who I've never met, and it was a real pleasure to meet. And since then, who has appeared on the Knit Tea Retreat podcast that they both have going. So they have a retreat that by the time this goes live, sign-ups will have started for, and that's in Cardiff next year, and I am really excited. I really hope I get to go, and I'm going to save up my pennies to see if I can make it there. And it's great to have so much heads up. I don't think I've ever had anything in my diary that is more than a year ahead. So it's happening next October in 2018. Anyway, so I saw Zoe and Jenny from All About Yarn. I got to see Debbie from Down Sheepy Lane, who was the first ever showcased independent yarn dyer on the Yarn Ambassador. So I didn't get to see her very much, but for a very brief hug, I got to see her. I tried also to see Kate from Northern Yarns, but Kate was working and her stand was inundated, which I'm sure is great news for her, but I didn't get to say a proper hello either. And my goodness, Yarndale was heaving. Really busy. I mean, verging on like unpleasantly busy. I only stayed for a couple of hours, but it was getting very busy in between those sheep pens, but it was an excellent experience, and I got to meet loads of lovely people who may well feature on future Yarn Ambassador podcasts. So it was excellent to meet them and be relieved of quite a bit of my hard-earned cash in exchange for yarn, which I think is a totally fair exchange. I'm not going to go through everything I purchased at Yarndale because I really don't want to be reminded how much money I have spent. And as I say, a lot of the stuff that I've bought will feature in future Yarn Ambassador blogs, and I kind of want to keep my Tinder dry for that. But I did get to meet some lovely people and get some very lovely yarns, so that will feature at some stage in the future. One of the main reasons for going to Yarndale was to meet up with the lovely Rachael of Cat and Sparrow Yarns, who is the focus of this month's pod blog. Rachael was sweet enough to agree to let me interview her before the doors of Yarndale opened to the public. Poor Rachael had a horrific journey up from Bristol all the way to Skipton. For those of you who know the UK, trying to do that on a Friday evening is a miserable experience. So Rachael had only just that Saturday morning managed to get in and start setting up her stand. So I feel like I added to the stress of Yarndale by kind of rocking up, going, hey, let's have a chat. But the great thing was that I was able to help set up Rachael's stand with her and her lovely mum, and that was great because I got to have a really good feel and a really good look at some of the yarns that I hadn't knitted with, so that was wonderful. Anyway, I will drop in the interview that we had there. It's a brief interview, and apologies for the sound. We were at Yarndale, which is a big auction mart, so it's kind of loud and echoey and people were still setting up. But we did manage to fit it in before the doors opened and the masses descended. So here's that interview, and I will magically reappear at the end of that. Hello, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the stress of coming just before you open for Yarndale after a hectic time on the M6 yesterday. But we are here, we are in Yarndale, and for the next 2 days you're going to be selling cats and sparrows things.
I am.
So you are Rachael, and you are one of the team of Cat and Sparrow.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about how Cat and Sparrow came about?
Sure. Well, I was living in Australia, and I met my friend Kathy because I sold her my first spinning wheel. So I wanted to buy a fancy spinning wheel. We just really hit it off, and we went to Bendigo Sheep and Wool Fair selling our hand-spun yarn together.
How does that compare to Yarndale?
Oh, it's enormous. It's enormous, but very different. It's more of a livestock show, I think, and they've got sort of the wool. It's just as much a pilgrimage for people as Yarndale is. People come from all over Australia to go there.
Well, that is quite a trek because it's big.
Yes, and it's beautiful, and it's in winter, unlike all the shows here. So it's freezing cold, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, we had a good time doing that, and then we decided that we would put our heads together because she was running Cat's Cauldron and I was running Sparrow Makes, and so we thought, oh, we'll come together and do Cat and Sparrow, and here we are. Now she's still in Australia and I'm here.
And is she still looking after the Australian arm of things? Excellent. So you do a split of kind of ready-made yarns that you dye yourself, and also the amazing fibre. What's the split? Are you more on the fibre side?
I'm more on the fibre side. I really enjoy doing the yarn, but I think if I was to sort of concentrate on the yarn, the fibre would suffer. So I quite like just doing small dye things that I enjoy, the colours that I'm making.
Excellent. And you seem to be at the kind of the luxury end of things. I got some of your gorgeous yarns, and they were so rich in silk that I tried to cake them up, and they just kind of immediately just went, no, I can't sit in a cake. I am silk. So is it what is it about the kind of the luxury?
I love silk. I love it. It's my favourite thing to work with. I pretty much put silk in everything.
Yeah.
So
Does that work for socks?
Yeah,
It
silk's
does?
great for socks. Yeah,
They don't
it's
they
very
don't slip?
strong. No, you have to have quite a tight gauge.
Okay.
And obviously, probably best to have more wool than silk, but it's wonderful for socks because it's hard wearing, it's warm, and
So you
the
have
socks
like-
feel wonderful.
Oh,
I
that
prefer it to
is proper
cashmere.
luxury for your socks.
Oh, it is. But I mean, people wear MCN, you know,
Yep.
and I like MCN. It feels lovely, but it pills.
Yes,
So,
very true. And
whereas the
silk
silk
doesn't.
no.
And have you always worked with kind of a mix of natural fibres and
Yes.
wool and?
Yeah, always.
And how did you get into it? What's your background? Were you just a knitter and a spinner and
It
thought?
wasn't anything. my grandmother taught me to knit. My mum's a spinner, and she was a spinner when I was a teenager, and I had a couple of goes on it, and then didn't even give it another thought. And I knitted my daughter a blanket when she was born, and then didn't think about knitting again for another 3 years. And I thought, no, I'm knitting a cardigan. The only thing I knitted was a blanket, and I thought, oh, a cardigan.
Why not? Why not
What
make
could
that
go
massive
wrong?
leap? Yeah.
So I got some yarn, and I just didn't really like the yarn. And then there was a yarn shop around the corner. It's a very long, story, isn't it? There's a yarn shop around the corner from my house, and they had the most beautiful yarns. They had Araucania, they had Malabriga, and I was just in love with the yarns. And I bought a crochet hook and did loads of crochet. And then I just thought I could make yarn. I could make my own. So I bought myself a spinning wheel, and the rest is history, really.
Wow.
So I'm more
That's
of a
quite a
spinner.
leap to go from knitting a baby blanket to being like, yeah, I will spin my own. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you
never
know,
looked back. And are you a full-time dyer, or do you have?
I'm becoming more so now. I mean, my children have just both gone to school, so I have the daytimes now. I'm a typist. That's my day job, but it's becoming more of my evening job, and this is what I do during the day now.
Oh, lovely. And I first met you up in another auction mart, up in Woolfest. Do you do the kind of the circuit? Can people find you? Where are you after
Hopefully.
Yarndale?
Well, Yarndale's my last one for this year, so I've applied for, you never know if we're going to get in.
Yeah.
I've applied for Wonderwool, I've applied for Edinburgh Yarn Festival,
Fingers crossed.
and I will apply for all of them. I would apply for Unravel because it sounds wonderful, but we're actually going to be away then.
So that's a lot, because you're based in just outside Bristol. That's quite a lot of time in your car.
It is, yes. Like I listen to audiobooks.
I love a good audiobook. It's the way forward. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to talk later in the episode about some of the bases and the things that we've lifted up with your yarn. But good luck for the rest of Yarndale. And you've got an online shop, so if people don't see you at Yarndale or at other festivals, they can find you at catandsparrow.co.uk. Wonderful. Thank you very much,
It
Rachel.
was lovely to chat to you.
So I hope you enjoyed meeting Rachael and learning a bit about her yarn company. I was delighted to hear that it had all started in Melbourne, because I started in Melbourne. I was born in Melbourne, and so have a lovely history and feeling about Melbourne. It's also really lovely to know that the other half of Cat and Sparrow Yarns is kind of doing a simultaneous thing in the Southern Hemisphere. So if you are in Australia, then maybe that's one for you to look out for as well. Maybe I'll have to go to Australia and, speak to the other half of Cat and Sparrow. Maybe. Don't think the budget will hold out for that. So as you can see, the split between what Rachael does is about 50-50 between her fibre and her yarn. I hope you managed to have a good look at the yarn and the fibre that she had hanging behind her. I'm not a spinner. I have tried to spin with a drop spindle and I really can't get on with it. It's not for me at all. So I'm happy to let other people do the spinning. And because of that, I'm going to be focusing mostly on her yarns, the pre-spun, the spun yarns that she dyes herself. But a lot of what I will talk about in regards to her yarns also applies to her fibre, especially the kind of the very sumptuous and silk rich aspect to it. This is one of the first times I've featured a yarn dyer who's really gone in for the silk, the really high silk content in her yarns. And I wasn't lying, it was really very hard for some of the yarns to get them to stay in a cake. It was remarkable. I was winding them up and they were just kind of slopping all over the place. But it does create a wonderfully sumptuous result. And so I did do some knitting with Rachael's yarns. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't go terribly off-piste in terms of my patterns. But again, I would like to say this is for the benefit of compare and contrast rather than lack of imagination. So surprise, surprise, I knitted a Linus shawl, which is a pattern that I have been using for most of the independent yarn dyers I've been showcasing because it's very simple. You can do it without thinking. It showcases a hand-dyed yarn wonderfully, and it only takes one skein. So it's ideal for those special skeins you pick up and you want to showcase it, and you don't necessarily want to have it on your feet. So the first one I knitted up was with a beautiful silk rich yarn. So this is on Rachael's Oh So Fine sock, and this is 55% Blueface Leicester, so really strong, and 45% silk. And I'm just going to see if you can see it up close on this one. So it's this one here. So this is called Sea Glass, and I picked this up actually at Woolfest up in Cockermouth, and that's when I first met Rachael. And I just fell in love with this colour. I hope you can see how delicate it is. Sea Glass is just the right kind of name for it, but it's very delicately tonal. There are lighter patches, slightly greyer patches, and I know this sometimes turns out differently. I ended up going for a very kind of light version of this. She had a couple of dye lots, as it were, when I selected it, but it really is very, very delicate and very easy to wear and so soft. I mean, so soft. I don't think I've ever worn something with this much silk in it. It's beautiful. It is very, very wearable, and the kind of colour that is very wearable with everything. So that was the very first one I knitted up. So again, a fingering weight yarn, her Oh So Fine sock, and as you saw from the video, Rachael says that these are absolutely fine for socks, so I might give it a go. I do have a looser gauge, so maybe I'll go down a needle size to make sure that I don't end up with a sloppy sock. But as she said, because silk is quite long staple, is that what you call it? It's very strong, and it's paired with Blueface Leicester, which is also really strong. So that might be really special. I also have another skein of that, which is in a colourway called Wisteria, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of grey with flecks of purple, lilac-y kind of colour. Absolutely gorgeous. So maybe I will try and use that for a pair of socks. I would trust Rachael, and I will trust that this will make an excellent pair of socks. So maybe that's for the Christmas list. So that was my Linus, again, the Linus shawl in the Sea Glass colourway. And that's in the Oh So Fine sock, which is silk and Blueface Leicester. Rachael also has another sock base, which is called Lone Ranger sock. So it's a single ply, and it's 100% superwash merino. And again, I made a Linus shawl out of it. But look at this colour. How amazing is this? This is called Olive and Let Live, which I think is hilarious, because it is just like a bowl of stuffed green olives with, and I'll see if I can show you a close-up of it here. So there is the little bit that I had left, and it's called Olive and Let Live, and it's in the Lone Ranger. So this is her single ply, and it's 100% merino, and it's very soft. And very, very wearable as well. It's a great pattern. Perhaps doesn't go with this jumper so much, but it could do. So those are the two kind of sock weights that that Rachael has. One with that really high silk content, and the other in a superwash merino single ply, which makes it really bouncy, makes it a joy to knit with. It's not splitty at all. I will say I was probably using the wrong needles when I made the Oh So Fine sock, because of the silk, because it's so slippy, it was a little bit splitty on the needles. So I think I should probably have used a different needle to combat that. But I do love it. So those are her sock yarn bases. Rachael also has a DK, she's got two DK weight bases. The first is called Glitter Ball, and let me see if I can remember what's in that. So that's a super fine merino with silk and with nylon, and obviously that nylon is a bit of stellina, so it has a glitter. But as I have mentioned, I am not a glittery person. I prefer mattes and neutrals and not glittery things, which is probably an error because they looked really nice. And one thing I will say about Rachael's online shop is that she's got some excellent descriptions. The way she talks about the colours, the way she talks about the yarn are really evocative. So there's one she has called Kir Royale, and it's this beautiful, deep kind of cassis colour, if you like, and it's got those sparkles coming through. So it is just like a Kir Royale. The DK I got was, again, her Lone Ranger. So this is a single ply DK, which I had never come across before. Well, I mean, I suppose I have, because it's kind of like a Lopi, I suppose. It's just single ply, but it's really, really bouncy, and it makes it quite thick. It makes it almost like an Aran. I suppose you might call it a worsted, but it's quite a thick DK, but it is super soft and bouncy. Again, it's 100% superwash merino, so it's just delightful. So I had fun because I haven't been doing a lot of DK knitting, but I thought I did want to kind of try out a different way, and obviously because it's a lot faster to knit up. So I tried to do two things with this. The first was a tiny little mitten, which was supposed to be for my, can you see that? Supposed to be for my nephew, but actually I think I probably made it too small. I'm not really very good when it comes to sizings of stuff, so it felt like that was just too tiny. I do have enough to make a second one, so I might try it, but it felt a bit tight. I think because it's such a thick DK, it's actually made that a lot thicker than I should have done. So that is user error, because the thing that I did end up making out of it was this really fun Seaman's cap. So this is a pattern I found, which is by Brenda Zuk, and it's called Seaman's cap. And it's just got this big folded over brim, so you can pull it down, keep your ears warm, and it worked out really well in this. I think this will go in the Christmas box for somebody else who likes neutrals. It's just got these flashes of yellow. This is called Foxtrot, this colour, which is great, but it's got the flashes of the olive, it's got kind of deep browns. It's a lovely kind of colourway for this type of year, when the leaves are going brown and there are flashes of yellow. So that was a real joy to knit up with, and that is going to keep my head super warm, or whoever gets it. I keep putting stuff in my Christmas pile, being like, yeah, this is all going to go and I'm going to be so sorted for Christmas. And then I keep seeing people, like members of my family, like my sister, who goes, "Oh, I quite fancy that. Can I have it?" And so I can't really say no. So it goes to her. So maybe I shall just deduct it from the final Christmas plan. But I really should by now have a massive crate of Linus shawls that is just ready to go for Christmas. But I don't. So aside from that, Rachael also has a Aran weight, which is called Lush Aran. For those of you who know Bristol, Lush is a very wonderful local piece of dialect, which is like, it's right lovely, we would say in the north. I think, Lush. So that's her Aran weight. And that is a mixture of 50% merino and 50% silk. So a really sumptuous stuff. As we mentioned, Rachael's kind of at the high end luxury fibre, and the prices range between about £15.50 for the Lone Ranger sock and DK, and I think it's £20 for the Lush Aran, which is 50% merino and 50% silk, and then the DK glitter ball, I think that's around £22. And that's all for 100-gram skeins. So I've really enjoyed this, and I've really enjoyed meeting Rachael. She's so lovely. I have yet to meet a yarn dyer who I haven't liked, but her colourways are just really subtle but well thought through. There are little splashes of colour, and they're quite natural. They're quite easy to carry off. There are some beautiful deep purples, this light purple. Now I'm looking at this, I really want to go and cast this on straight away. This is called Wisteria. That is Rachael's, can you see that? Rachael's card. It's a lovely little design with cat and sparrow. So it's been an absolute joy to meet Rachael and to play on her stand and to get to see her and to get into Yarndale a little bit earlier. Because I was helping her set up and doing the interview, I kind of bypassed the queues because, like I said, it was really super busy, and so thanks for that. That was wonderful. So that was the kind of the focus of this month. I thought I might just talk about some other knitting content I've been working on. If you're not interested in that, then feel free to turn off. Feel free to turn off at any stage. Like, you don't have to have permission. What else? So I thought it might just be worth mentioning what I'm wearing. This is a hand knit pattern. It's called Down East by Alicia Plummer. And it's knit in it's called Shetland type wool. I got it at a yarn swap a couple of years ago. And I quite liked the colour, but it's some really old vintage kind of yarn. There was no information on the label, what size needles to use, nothing at all. And this pattern calls for quite large needles. I think it's like 6mm needles. And it's, as you can see, it's kind of quite a gappy, loose knit, which has kind of resulted in quite a gappy, loose jumper, which is fine. It's fine for kicking around the house in, and it's very warm. I think it is 100% wool. It is 100% wool. I don't know what type of wool, but it's quite light, and it keeps me very warm, but it's probably quite gappy. So I think that was, again, probably a poor correlation of yarn to pattern there. Still learning, always learning, we'll get better. The pattern, the jumper I was wearing to interview Rachael, that was one that has been seen before on the podcast. It's the pattern called Courant, from Amy Herzog, and that was knitted in Twillies of Stanford Mist. Now, apparently, Jem Weston, who I met at Yarndale, told me that Twillies of Stanford are no more. So that's a shame. But because this is a really lovely yarn, but again, it was quite drapey. It was quite a bit of alpaca in it, so it's quite a kind of Again, another sloppy-ish kind of jumper, but again, it's quite comfy, it's quite easy to wear over the top of dresses and shirts and things. So that was that pattern. Didn't turn out as fitted as I wanted it to be. I think, again, I was between sizes, and so opted for the larger size. And I think next time I might not do that. I do prefer something that's a bit of a tighter fit, if at all possible. So those are the two jumpers I was wearing there. And I am so close to be finished on another jumper, which is the So Faded jumper, which is here. You can see it. Now, a lot of the other So Fadeds you might have seen, like Debbie from Down Sheepy Lane did this most gorgeous So Faded with lovely kind of purples and turquoise, and people have really embraced colour, and I have gone grey and monochrome, and I've been slightly kind of quite literal in the fadiness. I'm quite pleased with how it's turning out so far. 4 out of the 5 yarns are from yarn dyers who I have showcased on this pod blog. So it's quite nice. It's the kind of synthesis of a lot of the past couple of months. So starting at the top, we have Hollow Moon from Viking Yarns. Then moving down, this is Stranded. This is her Spook colourway, Amy from Stranded Dye Works. Then moving down, we have one that I love the name of, Mizzle from Down Sheepy Lane. And Mizzle, well, at least where I come from, Mizzle is like damp, wet, cloudy rain. Then we have Graphite. Is it Graphite? I think it's Graphite, again from Viking Yarns. And then the very final one, which I'll show you on there, that is actually not a UK yarn dyer, but a lovely yarn dyer from Seattle. I got to go to Seattle earlier in the year for work, and that is from a dyer called Hazel Knits. You can look her up, and I got that from a lovely place called the Fibre Gallery in Seattle, and that is called Low Tide. So it's a kind of really tonal, charcoaly grey brown. There are flecks of blue in it, and it kind of does look like a mucky shoreline at low tide, so that's really nice. So I've literally only got a couple more rows to do. In fact, I had finished this last night, but I tried it on and my belly kept popping out from underneath, so I thought maybe I'd better just lengthen it a little bit to cover the pie belly. Whoops. But yeah, I've really enjoyed that. It was quite an interesting construction, and the fading and stuff was fun. It did make me laugh that Countess Ablaze had put together some mock fade kits that were just black. I did quite like that. It's kind of an odd craze that's going around it, but I do really, really like it. I prefer the subtle kind of fade. It's not the first fade I've done. I did a Find Your Fade shawl, which is kind of hanging up at the back. I don't know if you can see it. Oh no, that's going to pull something over, so I'm not going to do that. But that was in more kind of neutrals and greys and dark blues and greens and things. So I'm more into the kind of grubby faded, I suppose. So yeah, quite looking forward to finishing that. Hopefully by the next, well, definitely by the next podcast, probably this evening. But then there are some ends to sew in, and then I should really block it because it's doing a slightly weird thing. I don't know if you can see, like where I've joined the collar, kind of ruffling. Maybe I picked up wrong. More than likely. So that's my So Faded. And then I've just got all sorts of plans for Christmas, but I don't quite know how I'm going to fit that in around the pod blog knitting as well. And work, because that's kind of important too. We shall see how that goes on. Yeah, got some serious Christmas knitting. But the great thing about Christmas is that I have signed up to Debbie from Down Sheepy Lane's advent calendar, yarn advent calendar, which I know she's been busy dyeing up, so I'm really excited to see that soon. I'm really sorry, it was beautifully sunny and now it's really getting quite dark, because that's what autumn is all about. Which is great, because then I get to wear jumpers. So I am sorry it's getting a bit dark. It's not supposed to look this moody. But I hope to see you in a month's time. I'm sorry this has come out slightly later than expected. Busy. If you liked this, then please give it a thumbs up, click on the like button, and subscribe if you want to find out when the next one comes out ahead of anything else. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a group on Ravelry. If you just look for Yarn Ambassador Podcast, you can find me on Instagram as @YarnAmbassador. You can email me at yarnambassadorpodcast@gmail.com. And I'm on Ravelry as Chellis. There is a Yarn Ambassador pod blog group, but you can find me as Chellis on there. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed this, and see you in November. Unbelievable. November, how has that happened? Thank you very much, and thank you to Rachael for taking the time to chat with me at Yarndale, and for producing some lovely, lovely yarns. Thank you. Bye-bye.